You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hi-ho, kids, and welcome to another fantastic edition of the Biz-Souls podcast. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen.
We do indeed. And this week, we have someone who is kind of a powerhouse in the insurance business. We have my friend Tobias Kennedy. We just call him Toby, or as I say, the big T. Toby and I met at the recent California HR convention in Anaheim. And just real quick, I came up, I had just worked out. I'm all sweaty in my workout clothes, and I'm walking in the bar because I was giving a workshop, and some of my other play friends were there. And I'm like, let's see who's there for happy hour. And he's holding court. And you were talking to like five people, and I'm, and I guess, he looks at me and I'm all sweaty walking up, and I smile and wave, and he smiles and waves, and he's like, we started a conversation, and he's like, what are you doing here? Basically. And I said, well, I'm giving a, presentation. I have a background in play. You want to come on my podcast? Okay. And
as easy as that.
Yeah. So it was pretty good.
Oh my God, you cheated on the Biz-Souls podcast.
I did. I go on a lot of podcasts with it. I'm just a lot friendlier to people who catch my eye as I walk and aren't afraid to talk to me when I'm all sweaty. Anyway, so let me read your official introduction as soon as I put these on. All right. Toby Kennedy serves as the president of Montage Insurance Solutions and the CEO of Simplicy Insurance Solutions, and has done so since 2007. He received his underwriting training from Blue Shield of California. He is a graduate of Loyola Marymount, can I say that again? Marymount University, where he studied political science at the Center for the Study of Los Angeles. He has received a certificate of recognition from the SFVBJ, San Fernando Valley Business Journal. Try saying that 5 times fast. As a nominee for the 2012, 2013, and 2015 Most Trusted Advisor Award. I feel safe already. Toby is widely considered an expert in healthcare reform and been a speaker to several well-regarded organizations. So, what I've seen just doing little stalking on you, Toby, is that, insurance is not the most exciting business in the world, and you make it more than palatable. It's like you got it going on. You have a lot of stuff going on, and you make it interesting. So
I mean, that's super sweet of you. Thank you. Yeah, it's
I'll be when you're expecting the check in the mail, but
yeah, right. When I'm at dinner parties, I'm not exactly Will Smith stunt double or anything cool like that. It's we do our best.
There you go. So you want to ask your question?
Yeah, well, we always start with a question. I do want to point out, though, do you notice that in the background, our shelves are lining up? I mean, talk about synergy.
There you go. That is
I
right.
was looking at it and I thought, wow, what happened to the shelf? And then I realized it was his. So the question we generally start off with is...
But we digress, per usual. Squirrel. Okay.
Well, there are a couple ways to ask this question. One is, what do you want to be when you grew up? And two, did you go up and show and tell, and here's what I want to be, and I want to be in insurance?
Yeah. In 3rd grade, I had my first broker's lunch talk of the town. No, I think that, if you talk to anyone that does what I do, all of us backed into it and fell into it. Right. It is not something that's really on the beaten path for too terribly many people. And for me specifically, it was a life of soccer and acting, man. I was chasing the dream, and, my level ultimately, so I played for a top ranked club, the US's Olympic development program, and I got to a top 10 Division I college soccer program. And that's about as good as it was. So not pro level, not next level. That was my ceiling. So it was fun. It was a passion for most of my life. And it was what I, saw when I dreamed. And when I wasn't on the field, I was doing, whether it was a lot of stage acting, some TV and film stuff. And then at some point when, I realized that you got to get an apartment, you have to hammer a check, you got to make a real living here. Those other careers really felt like you're sort of maybe at someone else's mercy or chasing the dream type of a thing. And got into insurance, which just seemed a lot more steady. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years.
Now, you look like you're in great shape. You still playing soccer then?
Well, thank you. I play a little men's league here and there, and actually somewhere along the way, I wound up being a jiu-jitsu guy. So I
cool.
wrestle a lot.
Oh, very good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Nice,
And
nice.
can I jump to another question?
Sure.
Or you want to go?
No, you can go.
So on the insurance business, did you start off in the underwriting department? Did you start off in the sales department? How'd you get into it? Friends said,
What's your
hey,
story? Come
yeah.
on. What's your story?
Somebody was selling you life insurance.
No, it's a good
you just-
question. So I was like, I think like the third or fourth or fifth hire for our company. We were a brand new company. It was my girlfriend at the time, now wife. Her mom started the firm and said, hey, you know what? This is back in 2007. So, getting people that were real adept at Excel and Outlook and some of the computer functionality that was really, it's hard to believe, but kind of working its way in ways that now it's so omnipresent. It's hard to go back 20 years.
Right.
But she gave me an opportunity and said, look, one thing or another, you'll meet a lot of carrier reps, you'll meet a lot of clients, you'll meet a lot of folk. You can really round out your business resume in ways that you didn't, previously have a ton of business experience. I've been coaching and playing and acting and those things, but getting into the corporate world. So it was really, I started on the consulting side, which is where I've been ever since. And ultimately some of the underwriting stuff, my background is training that you get along the way to kind of round out your insurance IQ. But no, I kind of, started as like I said, I think employee maybe 3 or 4 at a, real small business that we've, grown over the last couple decades and, invested a ton in. And sometimes, the grass is greener where you water it type of a thing. So we've been here, we've been, kicking butt together and really building something cool.
Fantastic.
Nice. So, first of all, what's the difference, excuse me, between Montage Insurance Solutions and Simplicy Insurance Solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was really kind of born out of March 23rd, 2010, the healthcare reform bill passed, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever, name du jour sort of a thing is. And it recalibrated federally, and the state of California went with it. And although the ACA wound up walking the definition from 100 employees back to 50, California stuck with it where we said, hey, look, we've got large group clients that are 100 and more. We've got small group insurance that's, fewer than that. And so it really drew this hard line that kind of changed things and it introduced a lot for individuals as well. So, the elimination of pre-existing conditions and underwriting and a lot of things that made individual and small group insurance an interesting market space, whereas we had historically focused on just large groups. So, larger multi-state, multi-site groups. So we launched our sister company and we didn't want to dilute the brand and the focus of Montage, which is truly a large group insurance consulting firm. But we wanted to have a response for smaller employers and individuals and those that need insurance consulting in a different arena. So that's kind of the delineation there.
Oh, excellent.
Got it. And so what sort of things when you focus on companies, like what do they need insurance for? Like what are the different areas?
Yeah. So, we have couple sides of our house, and one side is all the property, casualty, liability, workers' comp sort of things. And then a whole nother side of the house, all the employee benefit stuff. So if you're an employer and you're, ABC Denim Incorporated, and you're making jeans and selling clothes and all that, whatever, you've got employees. And whether it's for recruitment and retention purposes or for whatever your reason is, you want to build out an employee benefits portfolio. What medical are you doing? What copays? What deductibles? What insurance company? Dental, no dental, vision, life, disability, the kind of Aflac-y stuff, the cancer, critical illness, accident policies, those sorts of things. So when you're an employer and you're sitting down to build out a benefits portfolio, it's helpful to have someone like us that consults on that can benchmark and say, hey, in your industry, in your size segment, in your area, these are what folks are doing. And here's how we can shop that and procure that and put it together. And then service it the year throughout, right? So whether it's workers' comp and accidents and safety and claim prevention, or on the medical side where you've got members that they're just trying to get their prescription filled, but they're being told they can't, or they need help finding a dentist, or they got some bill that doesn't pass the smell test. There's a lot that kind of goes into partnering with employers, reviewing their insurance risks and needs, sourcing and servicing kind of that arena. And that's really what we do.
So can I ask a follow-up? Thank you. We're just so excited. We just jump in over each other. So do you work with EAPs, employee assistance programs, or is that totally different? Because I work, I give talks and stuff for a lot of EAPs, and I know it's a sister of insurance, but I'm not sure how they coexist or how one gets in with the other.
Yeah, so the employee assistance programs are either purchased on a standalone basis. And for more information about this, we did a podcast episode on it.
Okay, and we're going to talk about your podcast in a moment because
I know, I'm just teasing, but
No.
It's interesting because it is so related that it actually is something that I thought that folks that I speak to every day would like to understand. And other times when employers purchase maybe a group life or a group disability policy, often inside of that Unum or MetLife or Guardian disability policy, they have a little EAP baked in. So it can work in concert with the medical, and maybe the medical's got, any version of kind of mental health. But the EAP, for me, when we explain it to employees, a lot of times the positive is that there's not a lot of reporting back to the employer. It's complimentary access, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, marital counseling, all sorts of psychological counseling that allows the employee a sort of free and confidential outlet, whether it's just a couple of visits or unlimited or online or telephonic or whatever it is, that kind of plugs into that health ecosystem of the employer. So you're right, bang on. We work with that stuff, whether it's baked into another policy or it's written standalone. And then something that we sort of specialize in is the rollout of that, right? So if you have an EAP program at your employer level, but employees don't know about it, it's not really helpful, right? And so for a lot of employers, you might see engagement, honestly, 1, 2, 3%, whereas you can get it up to 20, 30, 40% awareness and engagement, depending upon the communication mechanisms that surround the EAP, as an example of some of these kind of ancillary parts of the benefits portfolio. And how do you find those, highlight those, message those, communicate those, and then make sure your employees that are in need sort of know about those things. So it's a great question.
Yeah, because that's part of what I do when I get called in. I talk to the HR people, and then to your point, I ask the people who show up how many people know about the EAP and use it. And I'm like, it's my favorite 4-letter word. It's free. It's like it's your life personal assistant. So between insurance and the EAP, they're like covered. So yeah. Anyway, so what do you do exactly with you? Do you do specifically sales? Are you more overseeing things?
Yeah. So I guess titularly, I'm the president of Montage and the CEO of some policies. So I have leadership and kind of broader strategic involvement in our company and our organization. But as a day job, I do serve as the account executive for a lot of our clients and a lot of our key clients. So my day to day is to partner with our account management team and some of the rest of the folk that we work with to kind of help the whole life cycle of a client, right? So whether it's prior to their renewal and we need to shop various insurance carriers or facets within their insurance portfolio or contract language to really make sure that we're actively involved in the negotiation, which I am, and spreadsheeting and trying to help figure out what exact insurance policies we're buying, and then kind of servicing in the year throughout, like you mentioned, the EAP. So, your arrival at a client where you're doing your thing is something that, as you mentioned, HR would have planned. And a lot of times for our clients, we're involved in that planning, and maybe it's wrapped around with some sort of healthy lunch or a doc talk or massage chairs or biometric screening event or whatever the case is that's got some sort of a, it fits into a broader wellness, and wellness being either physical, mental, sometimes financial wellness, right? So we're bringing out the 401k guys or whatever, all those sorts of things. That's kind of what I do literally daily.
Excellent. So when we have a podcast, is nepotism working for you? It's working pretty good for you, right?
Yeah. My mother-in-law, Danon Simpson, she started the firm. She's awesome, and it's really it's been interesting because we get to work together all the time. And at some point, my wife's like, "Man, you know my mom better than I do."
Wow.
We spend 40+ hours a week together for 20 years. And it's good that we have such a great relationship.
That's what I was going to say. You are really lucky that you get along with your mother-in-law.
I know. We talk to that all the time. Every birthday card, every holiday card, we're writing each other. How blessed we are. Really get along like we do. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, she was just trying to keep her daughter out of the poorhouse. So
that's right. There you go. I gotta push this guy. And,
So, real quick though, all joking aside, her background, how did she, I mean, starting an insurance firm is not an easy task. So you've got to have a huge amount of knowledge.
She has a super cool story, and you go all the way back a generation where her mom was raised in a French convent in Shanghai, China, and then moved to Kansas City and had her in Kansas. And she grew up in Texas and was a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader and was on the TV show Dallas and was on Dukes of Hazzard and was all sorts of like,
what cool, a boring life.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then, at some point along the way, she got into nonprofit fundraising and was a Sunday school teacher and did all kinds of cool stuff. Ultimately, she took a job, her first job in insurance that she thought it was advertising because they took out an ad in the Hollywood Reporter because they wanted the telemarketers to be lively script readers. Right. So it was like a ambiguously worded ad that she sort of replied to, and pretty quickly into being just on the phone. She was like, I wonder what that guy does. And, that was back in the 90s. And, she's been doing it ever since. And like I said, somewhere along the way in 06, she, hung her shingle, opened her doors, and a few months later I joined the crew, and
nice.
We've been going gangbusters.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
May I?
Have at it.
So insurance is driving a lot of companies out of California, not your particular necessarily health insurance or business type insurance. Just in general, it's gotten so expensive to do business. How is that impacting your business? Because you're a consulting firm, so obviously it's extraordinarily valuable as well.
Yeah, you're right to point out that the types of insurance we do is not necessarily impacted by that, but you're also right to kind of paint with that broad of a brush, because I think that the average conversation we have, the average consumer does kind of mentally sort of lump us into that. So we do get dragged into conversations a lot with existing clients who are like, hey, I saw this on the news, or I saw that on the news, or I'm hearing about this. And you do have to kind of reassure them, look, whether it's a carrier pulling out of California or, really what we're talking about is maybe residential and fire insurance and not necessarily what we're touching, or, even, clients that'll hear about Cigna or Aetna giving a 30% increase or whatever. And you dive further into it, it's like, wow, that's in the individual market in Ohio or something like that. Right. But it does make the news and it does, rile people up. So there is, a percentage of our day that's just kind of reminding folks, hey, here's where we're in, as far as the lane is concerned with the insurance that we partner on. And here's why those other news stories, you can kind of insulate them from your concerns, and we can just kind of march forward with the strategy that we have laid out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
I'm so glad. So I want to move on to, let's talk about your podcast, the HIT podcast, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm so glad. It's like, I thought I remembered that, and I had to ask him. I was like, this is what it stands for. So how long have you been doing it? Do you find that it helps in terms of marketing? Are you doing it for the love of it and to showcase other people? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so we launched in May of 2023. We do weekly episodes. So, we're not quite at 100 just yet, which we had talked about a little bit before the cameras heated up for y'all, but we're getting there. And, I think that for me, the best part is that, you can't get shiny object syndrome in this business, but there are a lot of vendors and point solutions and sort of wraparounds for HR that are important. And so, the podcast is kind of my commitment to our firm and my clients that, I now have a side job of keeping my ear to the ground, using what I think is my gift of discernment to figure out which of these things make some sense, holding a lot of the interviews that nobody has time to do, sitting in on a lot of the meetings nobody has time to do, and plucking out on a weekly basis. The part of the reason we call it the HIT is the implication there is that you're in and out, right? So we're trying to do 15-ish minute episodes once a week. So we don't spend 48 minutes before we get to the point with some, well-titled email or a video where you really care about this subject, but they take forever to get to it. We try to get in, get out, get to the point, and, really keep ourselves as a thought leader in the space, really keep ourselves kind of at the tip of the spear with respects to understanding the various players and machinations and focusing in where focus is warranted and giving some of those guys a platform. And then, we can kind of steer some of our clients to it. So we can say, hey, look, like we mentioned on the EAP side, right? So, in my business, it can be easy to know the 2 or 3 things that you know and live off of that. And, your poor clients don't know any better that you're not keeping, a wide enough skill set. But understanding when there's a difference between why do I want the EAP that's baked into my disability policy and when and why might I want a standalone EAP program?
Sure.
And if I do, how do I maximize the ROI on that? If you're buying it anyways, what are some strategies for us to get the most out of that, right? And so for me to spend time doing lots of conversations and interviews and enough to where I can produce an actual episode on that, that makes me a little bit better for my clients when speaking about EAPs.
So, and you could feasibly have a conversation about how games and play will ensure that employees won't leave and you'll have a better corporate culture. Just throwing that out there. So,
I mean, as a matter of fact, we did when we found you and pulled you aside and sat down and had a conversation with you about that.
We already did it.
So
it's a done deal. We actually did it already. So.
It just grows on you, doesn't she? I don't know if it's like cancer or something, but she just grows.
I was going to say grows implies that she didn't already come in with this great sort of feeling that there was a.
Well, I mean, Toby, we are both fairly outgoing people, so we do have that in common, and also the fact that I was an actor for a little while as well, so it helps when you're in front. Anyway, exactly. So what?
Can I get a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Who's your target audience, best client? Do you have a client profile that really works?
So you're talking about on the Montage side or on the podcast when you say target audience?
On both.
On the Montage side, we really focus on groups that are multi-site, larger groups, so a few hundred, couple thousand types of employees, because that space is really interesting and there's a lot going on. There's a lot you can do when you bring, intelligent insurance solutions and you bring a really robust service model to that space. There's a lot you can do. On the Simplicy side, it's really any small group employer. And what's interesting is because we own the Montage arm, there's this really cool symbiotic relationship where we buy stuff that most small group brokers would never have access to, right? So for example, again, I mentioned the benchmarking capabilities earlier, or some of the other things that we can bring to the table from a compliance standpoint, because we already bought them sort of in perpetuity on the Montage side and made this big cost investment that wouldn't have made sense for this small employer, but now we already own it. So, hey, it could fall off the back of the truck, right? So Simplicy for me is the best kept secret in the small group space, and they're doing great. And then with respect to the podcast, honestly, it's anyone that, my kind of joke is I hope to get to the place where if you're in HR, benefits, comp, you're in charge of any of this stuff for your company, we should be a mandatory follow, right? I'm only asking for 15 to 20 minutes a week. You can't possibly keep aware of everything going on in the space. So just have one other set of eyes and ears out there that's finding people like Rona that has interesting conversations about bringing play into your workspace and how that can change things, right? Yeah, exactly.
I adore Rona.
But truly, going out and finding those luminaries and those, smart, sharp people that have good, interesting things to say and just bottling it into a bite-sized piece every week. Yeah. If you're trying to get better at your job, you have to probably drive to or from work, even if you live real close, or maybe you work from home, but you got 10 or 15 minutes a week that you could invest in listening to something to make yourself aware of, I think Buddha said, if I talk, I'm only repeating what I already know. If I listen, I might learn something new, right? So it's your ability to take in something you didn't already know.
Well, and it's also, it's not only what you do, it's how you do it. You make it palatable, you make it easy listening, conversational, which is how people get it, If you're too professorial, no one's going to want to listen to it, you don't want to fall asleep, so. There you go.
It could be easy to get wonky in this industry. You're right. So thank you for the compliment. Yeah.
Of course.
Excellent.
Anything else? So if someone else wanted to do what you do, what do they do?
Yeah. How do you get started? I think that insurance is big. And so you want to see, do you want to get on the insurance carrier side, right? So do you want to work directly for an Aetna or a Cigna or whatever? Or do you want to be on the consulting side? If you want to be on the consulting side, do you want to be with a big McMansion place like a Aon, a Lockton or whatever? You want to be with a smaller privately owned firm, right? So we are still on 100% privately owned. And I think there's different fuels to that. And I think that applies to any corporate job, right? A small privately owned company versus a big, corporate gig is two different things in and of itself. But you got to figure out, almost like when you're talking to a kid that's graduating high school, right? Do you want a big UCLA type campus or do you want a smaller LMU type campus, right? What classroom experience do you want? Because it's different. And for every pot, there is a lid. And so I think that kind of maybe figuring out where you want to be in the insurance space. And then I'm so big on mentors. And I have always found that if you ask, people are happy to give up their time.
Right.
So go find someone that's doing something you want to do. And if I'm that for anyone that's listening, ping me, right? I'll put an arm around your shoulder, no problem. But go find a good mentor and start bouncing questions off that person, learning from that person and growing yourself up. I think that there's a lot to learn in the insurance space. So it's got a kind of big runway before you're, maybe as successful as you'd want to be. But I think that's true of a lot of things that are worth doing. It's true of podcasting, right? You don't just start off with, a million listeners and a bunch of advertising. You got to spin the flywheel a little bit.
That's right.
That's life.
There you go.
We started off with 1 million listeners, and then I opened my mouth, and we lost them all.
And we lost them all, right? I blame you.
Yeah.
So that what you said about mentoring is a very silky segue to, if they want to, how can they get in touch with you?
On LinkedIn, Tobias Kennedy. We own the URL hitpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram at Tobias Scott Kennedy. So, I've got a couple of the socials out there, and I'm happy to, field any inquiries and be of assistance to anyone out there that, is maybe looking to go down this path.
Sorry. I don't know how to turn it off. So anyway.
I don't even know if I'm going to be able to edit that.
That's
well,
okay.
We'll see.
Well, that's okay. That's the exciting world of podcasting.
By the way, just so
I'm
you
happy
gotta
to be
go.
helpful for anyone. And, I tell Danon all the time that, if I see further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. So anyone that's, trying to be successful, go do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey's 6'4", so he just looks around.
Good. I'm a scant 6'2".
And I'm 5'4.5". So there we go. I got nothing. Anyway, go ahead. Last words.
No, I this is great. And, part of me is thinking of the podcast. Do you have a production team that does it for you, or are you doing all the work?
No, I work with the gems, the amazing folk at Paper Crane. It's actually a buddy I met on the mat at jiu-jitsu. And I knew that this is what he did. And so I said, hey, I'm gonna launch a podcast. And he said, yeah, you and every third idiot I talk to. And I said, no, for real. And he said, okay, well, call me when it's for real. Now, we're, like I said, we're so deep into this. He's like, Toby, a lot of people talk about doing this. Not a lot of people have done it. So they come out. We do about once a month. I'll can 4 or 5 episodes, just kind of back to back. And we'll release those, each week. I get those edited throughout the month, and drop them on everywhere you get your podcast.
Fantastic.
That's kind of what we do. We do a bunch, and
we do a bunch, and then
it's a smart way to go.
And then I get in the back
and then he
room.
does everything, and then I leave, and he's in front of the computer.
And I'm sure your buddy is a lot more knowledgeable. It has been a learning experience. Anyway,
that is it. Toby, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. You are a joy to talk to, and I had a great time on talking to you on yours. I actually interrupted him on his. I'm like, wait, I'm not done yet.
That's cool. That's what we
had so much
how
fun.
Good conversations go.
It was great. Yeah, and you went with it, so I loved it. All right, that is it for us. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler,
and this has been Biz-Souls. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Toby.
Thank you.
Great to see you guys.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.